if I look at my particular story, I mean, I have pictures when I was 3 or 4 years old playing with Legos and, you know, putting things together and tearing my bike apart and all over the garage, right? And doing things with my hands, right? That sort of, and there's that dialogue that comes in that shows from a very, very early age, I was an engineer, right? And so you can put that together, right, in a narrative, in a story, right, in spikeview, that somebody can look at it and within 30 seconds can know the evolution of who you are and your interest, and it's not a question, right? And so I think that's very valuable.
If you're planning to attend college, researching schools and filling out applications is a ton of work and takes loads of time. You want to make sure you're focused on the schools that are a good fit. At the same time, colleges have thousands of applications to look over. It's hard to see you in that crowd. So we're going to have a conversation about how to get noticed and skip the lines at the college admissions office. And what better way than to explore the advice of someone who's been working for a college admissions office for decades. We're going to react to his tips on finding the right fit and getting into your dream school. I've got a panel of high school experts. I'm going to let them introduce themselves now.
Hi, I'm Farah, and I'm a sophomore in high school at Eden River Academy in North Carolina.
I'm Shreya, and I'm a senior in high school at Doherty Valley High School of San Ramon, California.
Thank you both for joining me. We recently rewatched an interview with a college admissions expert. I say expert because he works for a university for many years interviewing students. He wants them to be successful. He wants students to find a great fit. So I thought I'd start this off by getting some reactions from you about one simple thing that the interviewer said, and that is all of the college admissions material is designed to answer one question: who are you? Now, I went to college. No one ever told me that. It makes complete sense when I hear it, but it was kind of shocking to hear that all of this university admissions stuff is geared to answer, who are you? Farah, what were your reactions to that?
Yeah, so something that I really noticed was how he brought out the idea that they want to see uniqueness. They want to see how you stand out from everyone else. And a lot of times students might get caught up in trying to be the perfect applicant, be the person that universities might want to see, as opposed to really focusing in on all the parts of themselves and what might really make them unique or stand out. So I think that's just one key thing, is just really being yourself and showing them who you are, as opposed to maybe who you think they want to see.
Shreya, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the points Farah brought up. And I just want to add in a little bit of a different perspective, because I got to watch the video right after going through the college application process. And so my reaction was that this is 100% true. You know, when I was going through the process, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to put my best foot forward, but I've also like, all these other kids are doing this, that, and all this random stuff. And I was like, but I don't have that. How can I make myself sound like I'm doing more, this and that? But in the end, I realized the true path to take, or what genuinely has helped me, was just telling my stories like from the heart in those essays, reflecting who I really was, reflecting what I did, rather than feeling that maybe external pressure and things like that. And I think that's something he really touched on, is if you want to stand out, it's not to, I guess, copy what other people are doing or kind of compare yourself to them, but it's just to be true to who you are.
Yeah, one thing that I made note of that, of course, the numbers vary from school to school across the country and across the world, but even at an elite university, the best of the best from around the country, the brightest minds in a particular area, physics, anything, when they're all clumped together, applying for the same position, they all look alike when they're applying for college. And so there might be 20,000 geniuses or just really smart people in a certain thing, or 20,000 amazing artists trying to get into one school that only got seats for 1,000. So that was a little jarring to hear. And I'll tell you from the perspective of somebody who's well past the college years. This type of thinking, though, it's so, so important all throughout a person's career, because if you're competing, let's say you're an architect and you are competing for a project to build a new city hall, or maybe you're building the new university, there's no guarantee that even if you're a wonderful architect, that you're going to get that job. You're going to have to compete for it. You're going to compete against other architects who have also gone to other universities that are credentialed and qualified, and they've got a great resume. And so you're always going to be in the situation where there are a lot of applicants and only a handful of people. So another question that the interviewer piled on, he said, or another way of asking this, he said, who are you today and who do you want to be tomorrow? Do either of you guys, have you thought through that type of questioning, and have you had to answer it yet? Like if you're answering me now, who would you say you are today and who do you want to be tomorrow?
Yeah, so I can answer that. That's definitely something I've been pushed towards thinking kind of throughout high school as time comes to, like, I guess, decide a major, plan your future, things like that. That's definitely something that's always on your mind. As far as concretely answering like who you are and who are you going to be, I feel like I'm definitely not in a position where I can confidently say like, this is where I'll be working after college and things like that. But I do have a clear path of the major I want to go to, goal companies I want to work at, like which occupation I want to take on as soon as I graduate. Just those goals. I think having those goals would really lead you into a certain direction. And as far as competition goes, I think it's really important to learn that early on, because you're right, there's always going to be competition. You know, my school is highly competitive, so that's something I've definitely picked up throughout high school, is like, how can you stand out? And it's the same thing on college applications. A lot of universities have received record-breaking number of applications this year, and yeah, there were many qualified candidates that they just simply couldn't take because there were just so many and they were all so similar.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And just to add on, I think that maybe even if you don't, like you said, everyone's got to have, or maybe would be close to a general idea of where they want to go or things they want to do or enjoy. And so I think for me, I try to focus my time into places that might reflect the places that I do want to go or the person that I do want to be, not maybe wasting as much time with just getting stuff to write down that maybe doesn't fit me as well. I really like to focus my time and energy towards things that are going to benefit me in the future and reflect who I want to be.
So I know each of you have been using spikeview as kind of a way that is a memory bank of your life and its interests, its work that you're doing, that sort of thing. How are you guys using that to refine your story? Because I mean, listening to you, I know, I mean, you've heard from admissions experts. You already know in the abstract that you need to tell a story about yourselves. You need to stand out from the crowd. How are you using spikeview as a platform to present yourself as you go through the selection process, or, you know, Shreya, as you've been going through the selection process?
Yeah, so spikeview is a great tool to have. It kind of ties back to the question, who are you? I think on your spikeview portfolio, you can clearly see who you are exactly. And the spider chart that gets created, that I found to be extremely useful, because I could see where my strengths are, where I maybe want to focus a little more on. I could kind of base my interests, and I could find people and opportunities related to my interests. As far as the college application process, you can use spikeview instead of your resume type thing, and you can really put your experiences and accomplishments on your portfolio, and they'll kind of come to life again. And you can link that to your college applications, which really will give admissions a full 360 view of who you are, which is what they want. They want to see you holistically, and ultimately that is what will help you stand out, is when they can see the true you from all aspects.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, I definitely do like to use it to sort of like show all of my aspects, like Shreya said, a 360 view. And I think part of that is that, while I might have this area that I want to study, like if I'm really interested in business, I also have hobbies. I have so many other things that I do that I love that contribute to who I am. And I feel like spikeview is really only the only way that I'm going to be able to show all of those aspects. And it really ties you together. It really shows how all these things go together. Despite my focus wanting to be in this one place, there's still all these other aspects to me that make up who I am. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to hear you say a little bit more about that, because one of the things that I made note of from the interviewer was he was saying how important it is to refine your story. And he said, you need to present your true self going through the selection process, which, you know, it's kind of a fuzzy phrase. People say that a lot, be your true self. But what he was saying was, you don't want to give multiple personalities. So you don't want to tell the academics people, here's why I'm really good at taking tests. And then to other people, you say, oh, coach, here's why I'm really good on the field. Or, you know, things like that. That's what he was saying, like, don't have multiple personalities. So it sounds like that's what you're getting to. It feels like a bit, maybe there's a bit of a conflict when, on the one hand, you're putting a lot of information, things you do, interests, hobbies, volunteer work in a portfolio. How are you seeing that as taking shape as a single cohesive story rather than multiple personalities?
Yeah, and for me, when I hear you say that, my first thought that comes to mind is maybe the idea of showing versus saying. I think on a classic resume, a lot of times you can write what you want. You can write them that you've done all these things, that you've participated in all these things. But in spikeview, I feel like you can show, you can demonstrate, use pictures, interact, so they can really see what you've been doing. And for me, I think that's easier for them, instead of them just looking at all these things and being like, wow, this is different. How does it tie together? Is she really participating in these things? On spikeview, they can see it happening and they can really understand through that.
Yeah, bouncing off of what Farah just said, it's all in one place on your spikeview portfolio. You have your sports, performing arts, academics, volunteer hours, anything and everything is right there, which is why it's the holistic view of who you are, which is ultimately what admissions wants to see. And everything from academics to sports to electives looks good and is a way for you to add another thing and maybe even differentiate yourself in a way, which is so important for admissions to see.
I thought it was interesting that that he said, we keep saying this in different ways, universities want to know who you are, which I feel like if I was to say that into a crowded room of high schoolers, they would all nod and say, well, yeah, that's obvious. And yet he said, when it comes to college applications, this is the one area, or the big area, where students go wrong. They try to predict what the university wants and they guess wrong, which is, it's interesting to me because he kept underscoring, like, it's not, they don't want you to pretend that you like this, 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 and this. They want to know exactly who you are. And I thought an excellent way that he described this was using a baseball analogy, and he was saying, or a baseball team, he was saying, look, from year to year, the universities are changing their focus depending on how each school is made up. And it might be that one year they don't need any pitchers. They have a lot of pitchers. But if you play in the outfield, then you're going to look really appealing to them. And I thought that was a really good way of connecting this idea of if you think you found a good fit with a school, make sure they know what's actually you, because you could be their magic fit.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I feel like another flaw that maybe will sometimes occur is students might get lost. Like, they might have something that they're passionate about, and in wanting to get to that place that they envision themselves at, or that university, they might even lose their passion trying to be this ideal person. And so I think it's just important to know that the right university, if you are applying as who you are and you're hardworking, the right university is going to accept you, and they're going to want you because you are going to be the good fit for them and you're going to play a good role into their college.
Yeah, and another way to kind of think about it is, if everyone is trying to ultimately guess what the university is looking for, everyone's going to apply in the same light. And then again, there's the idea of not being able to differentiate. So if you just truly put down what you actually are rather than what you're assuming the college needs or this and that, then that's another way to kind of look different and maybe look unique, look special, and look like something that the university can take on in a different light.
Yeah, let me ask you this as a way of wrapping up and just getting you to think about other students, your peers who are just going through this now, or maybe they're a year or two away from it. What do you want them thinking about? Like, they hear these phrases like "tell a story about yourself," or "be consistent and explore the real," or "explain who the real you is." What's something tangible, some advice that you would give to somebody else that's about to go through this process?
So advice that I would give is, when saying put your story forward, don't overthink it. Like, your story can range from the smallest incident to simply like something like helping an elderly cross the street once, something as small as that, to something large scale, like, you know, starting your own nonprofit organization. There's such a broad, you know, I just went through the process. So I researched all these different personal narratives, personal stories, and I read a ton, from like the smallest to the biggest incidents. And each one is impactful. It's just how you present yourself. And there's a difference between presenting yourself in a way that is, you know, appealing, shows your best self, and changing yourself. So there's a fine line between that. And I think that's something you should really keep in mind, and maybe like be aware of, that you want to make yourself sound good. You know, you want to brag a little, which is where spikeview kind of comes in, because it organizes your brag sheet for you, all your activities and accomplishments. So you want to brag, but at the same time, you don't want to overdo it where you're adding all these things that aren't necessarily 100% true about who you are.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'm a few years away from applying to college, but I know that for people in my place, I would just suggest that really do what you want to do. And I think that George mentioned this in the interview, that you can tell when you're talking to someone. You can see if they're really passionate about what they're doing, or if they just did this because someone said that it was going to look good on their application. And so I just think this is really important. Like, you can experiment with what you're wanting to do, but also just be sure that you're enjoying this and figuring out who you are, and really ultimately just doing what you're passionate about.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that, the input from both of you. Just as a last thought from each one of you, what is one thing that either surprised you that you heard in the interview, or that when you heard it, you were nodding and thinking, I wish every one of my friends knew this?
I think that something that I was considering is what you were saying, similar to the baseball team, is a lot of times you consider what you've done and how you can fit into that. But I think it's hard to consider how you're going to contribute to that university. I think that's a whole other mindset that they're really strongly looking for, but it sometimes isn't represented as much. So I feel like that was an interesting thing to take in, that you are still looking to how you can contribute to their school, and as well as presenting yourself and what you've done.
Yeah, I definitely want to agree with Farah. That was actually something I was going to point out too, because I don't think we've covered that yet. But something where I was like, oh yeah, this is so true, is colleges want to know how you're going to impact their community, their school community. They want to know what you can contribute, how you'll fit in with the culture and things like that. In fact, oftentimes they'll have you write essays on solely, out of all the universities, why are you applying to this one, right? And so you really need to have an answer there. And I know before I started the college application process, that's not something I was really always thinking about. You know, I was like, okay, I did this, I need to write about this, I want to show this. But then I was like, when I got to the essays and the questions, I was like, oh yes, this is also something I have to research, I have to consider, I have to see myself going to that university and what impact it'll have on me and what impact I'll have on them. So that is definitely something I agree with. And of course, the ability to sell yourself. You have to like brag about yourself. You have to put your best foot forward. And yeah, I think we've already covered that, but yeah.
It's good to hear you say that, that both of you had that similar observation. And the comforting part of that is it's so aligned with that fundamental question that he said, all the admissions material is designed to answer one question: who are you? And that's directly connected to, after who are you, what does that mean for this university? If you're this type of person, what are you contributing to the university? So great observations. Well, I appreciate your time. This was fun to revisit this interview from a college admissions expert, the person, of course, that we want to listen to when we're thinking about applying to colleges and universities. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.